Oh, hey, deserving listeners. It's the final 2 episodes of Love is Blind Season 3. I think it's all the weddings and whatnot. Let's watch.
And pledge your undying love as the two of you grow old together. If so, say I do. I do not.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would be surprised by that. I would think either one of them would have said no for sure. And I've said this before, that the individuals, it would stand to reason that they would make decisions about whether or not to be together for the rest of their lives prior to going on the altar. And so they either internally make that choice or have that conversation with their respective other. And they decide weeks before being at the altar. But then they have to somehow produce content that will make the altar scene seem suspenseful. I'm guessing the producers don't want us watching the altar scene knowing exactly how everyone is going to respond. They want it to be a surprise. They want it to be suspenseful or something. I don't know. I actually floated these ideas with my wife, and it didn't seem to resonate with her, so that makes me think a lot of you probably don't agree with me or see it in a different way. I don't know. One of the things that it illuminates for us is, I do this exercise with my students. I will show them a clip of a couple or a movie, a fight between two people. And then I will say, independent, don't talk with your classmates, just free write about your reaction. Who's to blame? Who's the jerk face in that interaction? And often, if not always, there will be a wide variety of perspectives. And everyone will seem very confident in their take. They will say, well, clearly the husband is the jerk face because da-da-da. Oh, clearly the other partner is a jerk face because da-da-da. And if I ask them independently, how sure are you of your perspective? How common is your perspective? How do you think a lot of people would agree with your perspective? We vastly overestimate the validity of our perspective and the universality of our perspective, or the objective nature, meaning that we believe this is the objective way of looking at it. So when I watch this, I feel fairly confident internally, unless I check in with myself and remember cognitive biases and all that kind of thing, that a lot of these couples decided a long time ago, and then they shot a bunch of footage already knowing how they were going to respond, even having conversations or pretty much knowing how the other person is going to respond. But they know because of contracts or something, they have to kind of play along. And so they have a couple episodes where it all just seems like a lot of fluff, aside from the few couples that seem to be legitimately still in love and wanting to get married. I don't know. So when I, present my theory to my wife and she's like, I don't know. My first reaction is, what? How come you don't see it the way I do? Then I have to remember that when I see other people have these kinds of perspectives, and they're very sure of themselves, and I'm like, that's not my perspective. And your classmate also doesn't have that perspective. It's a perspective. It could be true or whatever. The conceptualization could be close to the mark. Who knows? But it's not universal. And so I have to remind myself that my ideas aren't universal and we can all do this. Now, watching Love is Blind, who really cares? But I think that it pertains a lot to political viewpoints, to cultural viewpoints. And I think that one of the factors that play a role in our confidence is that when we're in our own minds, there's no opposition. There's no counter data. And especially when we're watching a show like this, there's no way for me to confirm or deny my hypothesis because I don't have access to these individuals. And even if I did, they wouldn't necessarily tell me the truth because they would look like a fool, or maybe it's a breach of contract if they were to reveal what I think is happening behind the scenes, but I don't know. So when I don't have any data to refute me, then there's no pushback. So I can just believe and I can be very sure of myself, but I have to remember, who knows? And as a therapist, I learned this the hard way, so to speak, in the early part of my career, that in the beginning, I would start treating client or a couple, family, kid, and I would develop an hypothesis, a conceptualization, an idea of what's going on fairly early and feel very confident. And because I was insecure as a novice clinician, which is really a part of the job until you're at least 5-10 years into your career, I really wanted to feel confident. I wanted to feel like I knew what I was doing. And so I would latch on to these early half-baked conceptualizations, and then I would really try to shove it down the client's throat, so to speak, and that never went well, of course. It alienates the client. It denies me opportunity for more assessment. There's all sorts of problems with it. And I would learn, just because you come to an early hypothesis, that doesn't mean that that's reality. So you really just have to slow down and be very tentative and not fall in love with your own ideas. Because the other thing about being a clinician is that you're the professional, and although this is highly problematic in some circumstances and highly debatable, we're supposed, I'm a clinician, I'm supposed to know things, right? I have the education experience, the supervision experience that gives me the ability to make a decision or make a call regarding a conceptualization about a client. For example, if a client came to me and a couple, for example, and they each thought the other person was to blame, and I'm like, well, really, you're both to blame. So I am countering their perspective, their conceptualization. I am saying they're each wrong, essentially. Well, what gives me the right to do that, and am I right? Well, most people would say, well, you're the clinician, Kirk, and you've been down that road many times, and you have your system of figuring that sort of thing out, and it's probably generally true, and they're probably biased for themselves. But who am I to say, right? So when I would, as a novice clinician, jump to a conceptualization, I would feel like, well, I'm the clinician, and the client often would feel like I had authority, and so they wouldn't necessarily argue with me directly. And that's a problem, of course. So we, as clinicians, we just have to be really careful about bulldozing clients and people with our perspectives. And I've seen other people do it, and I've done it myself, and it's not okay, right? So that's what I'll say as we start watching this. But anyway, so he said no, and why would he say no? Maybe we'll get into it.
What we do all this for? Jeez, what we do all this for?
Yeah, one of the questions I have is for those people at the altar who knew or were fairly sure that this was not going to happen with a yes, yes, and I do. Do they tell their family? Because, I don't know, if I were in their shoes, I would say to my family, like, there's a chance that my partner or I will say no. And I just don't want to surprise you. I don't want to disappoint you. I don't want you to put a lot of effort into this if it doesn't work out, that kind of thing. But then, and sometimes I'm watching the audience to try to figure out, were they told beforehand? Because, just imagine you're a parent or a family member of someone that just gets dumped at the altar. You think you would have a reaction, and sometimes they don't. We can never really read people's minds by their facial expression. I mean, we have a big problem in our society about doing that sort of thing. But at the very least, we see the brother. He's just like, what are we doing here then? This is bullcrap. Like, so yeah, that seemed like a genuine reaction.
Talk about it here. Okay.
Now, I will say, me trying to read people's minds and figure out what's really happening, given that reaction, Nancy seemed to have a reaction of someone who was hoping for a yes, and maybe expecting a yes or something. And that's interesting, because I would have thought she would have highly suspected that he was going to say no. I thought he was done just a day into meeting her in person. Or at the very least, I thought she wouldn't want him to say yes. I don't know. Now, maybe she's just caught up in the moment, but I don't know. She seems to be having a genuine hurt reaction, and she's trying to hold it together, sort of. I don't know. I could see a lot of different things happening. I could see her being legit hurt in this situation. I think she's legit hurt by the relationship in general because of the way she's been treated by him. He just wasn't attracted to her, I think, and I don't know. But the way he went about it, he could have went about it in a different way.
Go find her. I don't like that.
Oh. Okay, baby. It's okay. Don't hug me. Please don't hug me. It's okay. Don't hug me. It's fine.
That was interesting. So she's saying, it's fine. Don't hug me. Don't hug me. Is that because she... I don't know. It's interesting. Let's rewind that.
Baby. It's okay. Don't hug me. Please don't hug me. It's okay. Don't hug me. It's fine.
Watch out.
Yeah, I don't know. She's telling the mom not to hug her. Is she worried it's going to make her cry more? Is she worried she's going to get makeup on her shoulder? Is she worried that it'll delay the next scene where they have to talk on camera? I don't know. It's don't hug me. Some people will not want pity, right? I don't know, it's my top hypothesis. I'm not in love with it, but some people are like, look, don't pity me right now because I'm not a piece of crap. I don't need your pity. And there's a lot of this going around, and I've seen a lot of it over the years. I remember being pretty confused about it. So let's just take Nancy, for example. Let's say she legit did not know he was going to say no, or hoped he would say yes and really did want to be with him, which is just strange in terms of the footage that was. I mean, he seems like a good enough guy, but you saw the scenes that I did. At the very least, even if he is a good guy, there's probably a different person out there that fits his personality better, and for her, right? Anyway, so let's say that she's legit like, oh my God, this is shocking. And she feels rejected. She feels humiliated. She feels completely embarrassed by what's happening, and then all these people swarm in to hug her, and she's crying, and she's just like, look, don't have pity on me, I'm strong, I don't need anyone's pity, I'll bounce back, I don't care about this, I'm just having a normal kind of teary moment, it's just kind of an intense moment, and so don't look down on me, right? And people are entitled to that position, I guess. But to me, when we're taking care of someone, we're not looking down on them. We could, right? There are ways to do that. But I think people, because of our culture around anti-vulnerability, anytime we're in need of care and love from other people, it feels weak, right? And thus we will say, don't take care of me, because that implies that I need it and I'm weak and I don't want that to happen. So I don't know but you can think about it for yourself, that when you need something emotionally, that be careful about jumping to a conclusion and a defense around, I don't want your pity. The other thing is, pity isn't demeaning. It's not a terrible thing. I can pity someone. If someone had a terminal illness, I can have pity for that person. But somehow the word pity has become like condescending. But pity is not necessarily condescending. You can be condescending like, oh, you, Nancy, oh, you're such an ugly duckling and no one will ever love you and we all know it. Like, let me hug you. Yeah, that's extremely condescending and hurtful. To feel bad for someone is pity. And if I'm going through something horrible, I want people to feel bad for me. I want people to pity me. I don't want people to condescend me and look down on me. But if I'm going through something horrible, I want people to have empathy for that and to feel bad for me. That's pity. There's nothing wrong with that.
Nancy, come here. Let's talk about it. Come here. Me and you. Come on. Number one, I'm sorry.
The more and more that this scene goes on, the more it looks legit. Like she thought he was going to say yes. There are couples that have had this moment where I'm like, that doesn't look real to me. Now, again, we can never know because there are different ways that people react. But yeah, this is actually looking like she believes that he was going to say yes. And yeah, it's rough.
This was not.
Mom, please go away. Mom, you have to go. You have to go, please.
Whatever I explained to her, I'll explain to you. You'll have your turn. Let me talk to my fiance right now.
Away, Mom.
Is that okay?
I just need to talk to Bartise.
It's kind of weird that the mom is refusing to walk away. I mean, I get that the mom cares and is protective, but Nancy seems like she's managing pretty well. So, we don't have a lot of data with the mom, but we have some data. And this moment is interesting. And the way that Nancy's talking to her, I don't know. What's going on? Why is the mom forcing her? I'd understand if Bartise was like, Mom, go away, and Nancy wasn't saying anything, and so she stays around. But Nancy's like really being pointed, and she's not going away.
Well, I just want you to know that I'm here for you. And can I tell you something?
Please, I will talk to you after this. Tell me whatever you want to right now.
Okay.
I will talk to you.
I will talk to you.
Maybe it's fine.
No, it's not fine.
It was shocking.
All right. I mean, I'll give Bartise kudos for trying to do right by this. I'm guessing that if this was a real situation, Bartise weeks ago would have told Nancy that either he's not going to say I do and they should break up, or they should push back their wedding date or something, or they should wait. So he seems to be that kind of guy. There are other moments where he seems extremely oblivious. He just seemed, the times where I was like, yeesh, and so was Nancy. It almost seems like Bartise was naive. He didn't seem to know what he was saying would be hurtful or something like that. So I think he has a good heart, but he has some blind spots to other people's experience, is a way to put it. But I think deep down, he does have empathy, he does care, and I think he's exhibiting it here. He goes up to her and, is not getting into it with the mom, and Nancy says, it's okay. And he's like, no, it's not okay. What I did was wrong, I think is what he's going to say.
We're absolutely best friends. Yes, all of it works, but there's no way I can, what I've gone through in the real world with you and with your family and with everything that we talked about, there's no way for me in my head that it makes sense to get out there and say yes.
So what's that explanation? What does that mean? Let's listen to that again.
We're absolutely best friends. Yes, all of it works, but there's no way I can, what I've gone through in the real world with you and with your family and with everything that we talked about, there's no way for me in my head that it makes sense to get out there and say yes.
All right. So I don't know if I reacted to this on camera and posted it, but there were a lot of scenes in the final episodes coming up to this moment where I didn't react because I didn't really know what to say, and it all just seemed like a lot of fluff. When they go to the wedding dress shopping and the bachelor party and all that kind of stuff, it's interesting, but it's not really commentable given my style of content or what I think people are wanting me to comment about. Anyway, but he did talk about how when they did talk about their views on abortion, which I think I talked about in a previous video, how I really commended them. I don't think I've ever seen a conversation in that category on these reality TV shows that was so mature and upfront. They didn't see completely eye to eye, but there was a pretty big overlap in terms of their Venn diagram about how they saw things. There were some minor differences. And I will say, I don't know if I commented on this, but Nancy was, because of her experiences with people with developmental disabilities, I believe is what she was saying, that there's a chance that she would terminate based on finding out the risk of that or the genetic markers of something like that, which is controversial, right? Depending on how people are. It's a choice. Everyone legally should be allowed to make that choice, and it's complicated and it's difficult. No one does it easily, right? It's a very difficult choice. And also, people with developmental disabilities are not worthless human beings, of course. People with developmental disabilities are worthwhile human beings who are wonderful and contribute to society. Anyway, point is that they had that conversation. He later on, weeks later, was saying that because they didn't see eye to eye on that was like this huge barrier to them getting married. I don't know, but my conspiracy mind says that he knew he didn't want to be with her early on, maybe within the first few days, maybe the first few weeks, but didn't know how to say it, maybe didn't know he could say it. I think, again, if he was on a reality TV show, he just would have broken up with her. But because pressure or the contract or whatever, he starts to look for ways, and I guess people will do this in real life as well. They'll look for other reasons. If you've ever been broken up with and the reasons that the person gives you, you're just like, huh? What? And that doesn't make any sense. Sometimes, not always, it's an indication that there's something else going on. They're either ashamed of what they've done, cheating or something, or they're trying to save your feelings. Because I think if Bartise were to talk to someone other than Nancy while the cameras aren't around, I think he would just say, as soon as I met her, I didn't feel it really. You could say it's a physical attraction thing. You could just say it's a chemistry thing. I don't know. We felt it in the pods. I did not feel it in person. Romance and love, it's kind of a magical thing that we can't really identify why we fall in love and why we don't, and I just didn't have it with her, and I kept trying to make it work, but it just wasn't really there. I think that's what he would say. I think he would frame it more towards looks, but anyway, so I think that he's sticking to that narrative. So according to this narrative that he's saying, he was totally in love with her, totally attracted to her, wanted to spend the rest of my life, but there was this difference in how they viewed this topics, and that just completely ruined everything. Like, it just doesn't seem likely, but I don't know. I don't want to call people liars. I just don't know. Plus, another part is when we are breaking up with people, for us to be accurate to our partners as to why we're breaking up with them, we have to be extremely self-aware. We have to have a lot of support and people listening to us so we can kind of explore and bounce ideas off, maybe therapy, that kind of. So there's a lot of barriers to being accurate with as to why you're breaking up with someone, but I don't know. And honestly, if it is because of attraction to Nancy, I would say that it's not a bad idea to emphasize things that aren't going to give someone a complex, right? To emphasize, look, we have all these differences and it's just not going to work. And another factor that you don't mention is something about them physically that it's just not working for you or something. Because I have treated clients who have been broken up with and their partner said something about their body or their looks. It gave the dumped individual, my client, this decades-long syndrome around insecurity, around something that was not objectively wrong with them. You know what I mean? So I guess that's another thing to think about. If someone ever does say something to you along those lines, is to be very careful about giving in to those ideas, right? Because there's so many messages in society anyway, and then you actually have someone directly say, I don't love you because of X about your look or your face or your body or something. Be very careful about how you deal with that, I guess, because you could potentially go down a road. 90 Day Fiance, think of Darcy, for example. I don't know, but it seems as though she's overemphasizing parts of her personality and look, and not paying attention to other parts of herself. I don't know that, but it just kind of has that look to it. But anyway, so let's see how this goes. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.